Good morning. Welcome to A Fine Time for Healing. I'm your show host, Randi Fine. Today we have with us Dr. Ervin Laszlo, who is a Hungarian philosopher, science systems theorist, integral theorist, and originally a concert pianist who has published about 75 books and over 400 papers. An advocate of the theory of quantum consciousness, Dr. Laszlo has a PhD from the Sorbonne and is the recipient of 4 honorary PhDs from the United States, Canada, Finland, and Hungary. He has many awards and distinctions, which include the Peace Prize of Japan, the Goya Award, Tokyo 2002, the International Mander of Peace Prize, and a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize 2004 and 2005. Formerly professor of philosophy, systems science, and future studies in various universities in the US, Europe, and the Far East. Dr. Laszlo lectures worldwide. And today he lives in a 400-year-old former chapel in the hills of Tuscany, Italy. And so I bring to you today from Tuscany, Italy, Dr. Laszlo, and it is my absolute pleasure to talk to you. So welcome.
Randi Fine, it's great to talk to you.
Yes,
Very good to see
so
you.
nice to talk to you. Okay, so we're talking about your book, Dawn of an Era of Well-Being, New Paths to a Better World. And you have some very, very interesting things to say that we really all need to hear. So in your book, you talk about how we are changing. And I know this is a very broad question, but how are we changing? And let me add on, you can add on to that, where are we headed?
I wish I knew. I wish anybody knew.
Mm-hmm.
I know where we should not be heading.
Okay.
I also have an idea of where we should be heading.
Okay.
We're still not knowing where we are actually heading, but we can do our best to change the direction as we're heading, because it's not if it's just repeating what we've done in the past, it's not a good direction. You know, Lao Tzu, the great sage of Asia, of India, had said, if we don't change direction, we'll end up exactly where we're headed. He said that centuries ago, and that is true. Because if we don't change direction, we end up where we have been heading and where we continue to be heading, and that's not a good thing, because that will create additional pressure, additional crisis. We have been heading into a very delicate situation where the very physical conditions for life on Earth, including human life and especially human life, have been in question. So we have got to change. We have got to change in a better direction. And I have some ideas that I've been sharing with my many publications now and many podcasts about what the possibilities are. You as a healer, of course, would know very well that there are ways we can heal ourselves, and there are ways that we can be mistaken about the way we treat ourselves and not heal, but create problems with each other. So I'm happy to discuss about some of these possibilities.
Okay. That sounds really good, and we're definitely going to discuss them. You say that the pandemic has been an opportunity amidst the stillness to reflect on overcoming the old normalcy and finding a new normalcy. So what's going to change between the old normalcy and the new normalcy? And I know you say you wish you knew, but what are your theories?
There's only one normalcy. Only one is genuine, true normalcy. The others are imagined, flawed normalcies. What is normal is what is coded into life, into the web of life, what is coded in the universe itself, because it's the way life grows and evolves on the planet. That's the normal way. We have been opting out of that way, and we've been creating an artificial synthetic environment for us, using our technology to compensate for faults and just to promote our own well-being very often at the expense of life around us. So that's not a real normalcy. That's as a normal, right? But it's not the good norm. It's not the real one, not the genuine one.
Right.
But there is, of course, a real norm, the norm where life can flourish on Earth. We are a human being and a living being, and we are not that different from any other living being on the planet. What applies to them as a norm for striving applies to human beings as well. Only we have forgotten that, and we thought that we can create our own artificial ways of going. So it's time to move back and find the normalcy, which is really the norm for striving on planet Earth.
When was it normal, if not now? When did it go off the rails?
Well, it's been going gradually. I think at least 200, 250 years. You know, it's associated with the name of some great thinkers whose followers have mistaken their ideas. Because I have in mind, in particular, Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. I mean, there is Newton and there is Darwin, and there are Newtonians and there are Darwinists. Now, Newton was an intensely spiritual person. We know that because his writings have been preserved. It's still in the manuscript form in the British Museum. Darwin also, if you analyze it better, we have talked more about love and belonging to each other than talk about the strongest. Yet the followers of Newton talked about the universe as though the whole universe would consist of those mechanical laws and little mass points that the mathematics of Newton foresees, mechanically interacting mass points. Darwin was taken by the Darwinists to talk about the survival of the strongest, which means the fittest, meant by it, the followers meant the strongest. But Darwin didn't mean by fittest the strongest. He actually meant the most cooperative, the best, more flexible, that could work together with others. Newton thought that there is the mass points are not all that there is in the universe. There's a deeper sense of what we call matter. It's more like a thought, more a spiritual thing than a pure mechanical, material thing. So I think we can blame the followers very often, not the people themselves, because great scientists are usually, and these are not no exception, very intensely spiritual people. They operate not only by cool calculation of mathematics and statistics, they operate also by deep intuition. In fact, Einstein himself said that intuition is more important than rationality. Things start with intuition, then your rationality elaborates that, you know. But if we don't use our intuition, we can go off in the wrong way. So when did we go off? At least with the application of Newton's Principia Mathematica and with Darwin's The Origin of Species. That's over 200 years ago. But then in the 20th century, we've applied the fantastic innovations in technology to carry out what we really wanted to have for our own convenience without regard to what it does to the larger system of we are in a part. We have started overdoing individualism, which seems like a heresy to say that, because we have been extolling the individual, you know, getting away from collectivism, which was branded communism, which was well-meaning at the time, but it was very much misled the way it was applied. But the individual that became the ruling criterion of progress, of desirability, was separated from the rest of the world. The individual person, the individual nation, the individual enterprise, these are all where the things that were of which Donald Trump could have said come first. He said America first. We could have said, you know, General Motors first, which was said also by the former head of General Motors, actually, or General Electric, or any other big company. So this is a problem, because this kind of attitude doesn't keep account of what we nowadays realize is the wholeness of life, the wholeness of all the evolving systems. You can't take them apart. One thing is connected with all the other things. They're intensely whole. We know that from quantum physics now. We know that from quantum biology. And it appears in quantum consciousness research also. So mistaking the part for the whole was a grievous mistake. And it created the kind of conditions on Earth which now threatened the very survival of the human species. So it's time to wake up. It's time to correct the fault. There's still time, I hope, I think, but we have to heal. This is a fine time, an important time to healing, as you say.
Wow, that makes so much sense. In your book, you talk about how science is changing and how scientists are going to see things differently. So I think you're talking about quantum science, quantum physics. Is that really what you're talking about in that with that comment?
And relativity, of course, and the new physics, the new science, which is now has a different basis. It's not based on the impersonal mechanistic laws that has fabulous applications for technology, with basing on Newton's mathematics, Newton's laws. But we are talking about one step further. What is embedded beyond in the cosmos, beyond these laws? What generates the laws? The laws in new quantum science are a manifestation of something deeper. The laws doesn't occur on this superficial level of the everyday world. The laws of the world are what in quantum physics is called the implicate order, the deeper reality. It's not just imagination, although Plato was talking about the same thing 2,500 or more years ago, talking about the level of the forms, of the ideas, of the soul. Nowadays we can talk about the implicate order or the quantum dimension, or the universal quantum field, or the Akashic field, as I've been talking about it too. So there it is. This is the new science, is more than the science of superficial phenomena. It goes in depth of what there really is, and what there is much more than just meets the eye.
Yes, and I've always known that, but it's really interesting to hear you put it in terms of science, and because the Akashic records and all these kind of topics, all these kind of theories have been very spiritual and very much removed from science, and now you're sort of bringing them all together. You say that we need a common narrative to guide us to our evolution. So when you say that, you mean by the common narrative, and I know that you mean that we should all be acting as one unit. But is there more to that than what you've said previously in this?
Well, you have to agree on what I'll also be calling the new paradigm. That means a mindset.
Okay.
It's an idea set also. Mm-hmm. What do we really believe this world is? What do we believe who we are? This is not a mechanical aggregate, just a physical body of skin and bones. Mm-hmm. We are living things. We have a consciousness. And we are part of the great wave of evolution that unfolds on this planet, has been unfolding for 4 billion years. In the universe, 13.8 billion years. This is all what science now discovering now. Ancient wisdom. So the discovery is just to show in a provable way what we have known, suspected intuitively for thousands of years. That things move together. If you read what Lao Tzu and others said about the Tao, for example, it's very much the same sort of thing. It's all the great prophets of the religions who are talking about love as being the ultimate reality in the world and connection between people. Now we know this. Now we know that there's a scientific basis for that, because there is no such thing as separateness in the world. Einstein said that. It's an illusion, he said. There's no such thing as one thing alone. I talked about individualism a moment ago. It's the same thing I mean now. Really, we are not really one thing here and now, and the others are elsewhere and are other things. Ultimately, in the light of the new sciences, there are no other things. They're all part of one wave of evolution that's unfolding. Even our mind is one. Strange to say that the greatest scientists were saying this. Carl Gustav Jung, for example, but also physicists like Erwin Schrödinger said, consciousness is one, he said, very clearly he wrote that. There is no such thing as consciousness in the plural.
Mm.
So this is the same old idea, the spiritual idea that there is a cosmic consciousness of which we are all manifestations.
Right.
Our individual consciousness is an emanation, a manifestation of that cosmic consciousness. Sounds intensely spiritual, far from science, but it is the implication of the new sciences.
That is amazing. And I love to hear that, because these are, I believe that. I believe that we all are from one consciousness. Do you think that chaos and confusion have to precipitate evolution as we go from, metamorphose from the old to the new? Is that always the way it is?
I'm afraid it is. I'm afraid it is. Little change will occur smoothly in a system. If the system will compensate for it, it has resilience in it. It has complementarity of functions, repetition of functions, backups, etc. And so a system adjusts for small changes. But when it comes to fundamental change, something has to kick that system out of its current regime, current way of working. And that's an expression coming from cybernetics, giving the system an initial kick and to launch it on a new different trajectory of its evolution. Okay. This is how it's usually worded. We also know that chaos is both the breakdown of the old and the womb of the new. Chaos is a bifurcation. I like to call it a bifurcation. Is a very clear concept. It means that the evolutionary trajectory, the way a system evolves over time, branches off into different branches. It cuts off, it selects some branch that is different than the previous one. On the whole, in general, we can say that a bifurcation either creates a higher level of order and what is now known in sciences as coherence, the interconnection between things, or it leads to the dissolution and decay of the system that exists, that undergoes this process of bifurcation. That's the choice before us. And we see it exemplified. I've been talking about this for 15, 20 years at least, writing more than a dozen books about the bifurcation that's coming. And now it has come. And it's fabulous that actually, to my mind, that you see that what we've been talking about as something that is going to come has actually arrived. It's here. We are in the midst of a bifurcation. And we have this option of moving with it, recovering the normalcy, the real, genuine normalcy, or we're reaching toward higher and higher levels of instability. We talk about unsustainability. This world as it is unsustainable. If you continue with it, you just will fail to sustain it, and then the system collapses. So it's a very, very sorrow, very brute and forceful change, an alternative. Evolve or leave the scene. Evolve or go down.
Do you think that that happens with individuals as well as they evolve? That because I see that there's always something, like you say, that sort of kicks you out. It kicks you out of the old and into the new. Is that pretty typical with individuals as well?
All progress is the great invention of innovation, discovery, let's say, of the new sciences, of the new systemic approach of systems theories. That this kind of evolutionary process that's relating, so it's not unique to humanity, it's not unique to the whole set of people, to society. It's all systems that have reached a level of complexity evolve the same way. It could be galaxies, or it could be atoms. If they reach a level of complexity, then it becomes unstable, and it finds a new stability, a higher level of coordination, higher level of coherence, as we say, or it goes and decays, and ultimately it becomes extinct or disappears from the world. Wow. So applies to the individual, it applies to humanity, it applies to all species, it applies to the universe.
And that really addresses the question people ask, that why do they have to go through things? You know, why are things so hard? But I think that pretty much answers it. People are really, a lot of people are waking up, and they're becoming more aware of their consciousness. I see this in my show with many people that I interview, with people that I talk to, and I'm just noticing this. We're becoming aware of our consciousness and our oneness, but some of us are able to grasp this and some of us are not. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, why do we know? Why do we can perceive something, and why some people do as others don't? You know, there's an old insight. It says we believe. The skeptics say we believe what we can see, but there's another side to this. We don't see something that we don't believe in. You know, it seems too spiritual kind of thing to say, but it's actually experimentally true. If you strongly disbelieve a phenomena, you have great difficulty in even perceiving it. You know, we just don't see it.
Right.
So it very much depends on our mindset, on our consciousness. If we are not open to novelty, to new things, you know, then we are closed off, and eventually we may go off on a blind dead end, you know, if we don't change.
Right.
We have to be flexible. We have to enlarge our vision, have to be open to new things. And something else which is so interesting and important, I've been talking a few days ago also with the head of the Heart Math Institute. You know, the newest insight that are coming about is that our heart perceives information from the world, picks up information from the world before the brain does.
Our heart does, really?
The heart does, yes. And it transfers to the brain in a split second. So it seems that the brain gets the credit. And the brain is picking it up. Actually, the heart moves faster. The heart is the perceiver. The heart has its own intelligence. We talk about nowadays about, the scientists talk about brain-mind coherence, which means that the two are tuned together. So that what the heart perceives is transferred into the brain. So the old saying is open your heart is a very real meaning these days. If you open your heart, you perceive more things. You perceive the deeper reality in the world. We know that many so-called non-ordinary kinds of information come to us in altered states. It's said to be spiritual, it's said to be perhaps far out, only for prophets or shamans or whatever. Actually, these information come to us, and when they come, they seem to come at a deeper level of frequency. The frequency of the electroencephalograph, you know, the EEG pattern.
Oh, okay.
You know, we ordinarily operate at a beta level in the everyday world, but these non-ordinary information comes about at the alpha level, you know, being an alpha state, one talks about, you know, even below the alpha in theta, you know, and in delta. Amazing. Ordinarily, we think that people are in the delta state, and the brain is operating on the delta level of frequency, are in deep sleep. It seems that some spiritual masters and healers are awake, and they are in a delta state, you know, at deep level. But they can pick up that information. And now the insight that's emerging on the horizon, that actually it's the heart that picks up that information. And the brain gets transferred into the brain. So new perspectives, but also old insights. Let your heart connect you with the world.
That's really a new concept for me. I have not heard that, but I know that in all spiritual work, the heart is really important. The heart energy is really important, that we focus on that. So that makes sense. And I always tried to wonder what the relationship between the heart energy and the actual organ was. But are you talking about the actual organ of the heart, or are we talking about the energetic aspect of the heart?
Well, the actual heart has an energetic aspect.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But we are talking about the actual organ of the heart.
Okay.
You can measure the electrical impulses that are emitted by the heart. And we can see how they respond. These electrical impulses are following the information that seems to be embedded in us, that comes to us. And that's very often what the electrical impulses show that the heart responds to appears later, sometimes seconds, that's a long time, seconds, seconds later it appears in the brain, and might be even much later appears in consciousness, if at all. It could be suppressed from consciousness.
Right.
But yes, you're talking about the physical organ, the heart, and it's now the scientists are measuring what is the energy state of the heart.
Wow, that's phenomenal. You say if contemporary societies are to find the path toward an era of well-being, 4 fundamental questions need to be raised. And I'm going to ask you the 4 questions and then we'll go through them quickly. What is the science of life? What is the true nature of healing and health? What is the condition we call well-being? And what is the true nature of healing and, oh wait, I asked that question twice. I asked that question twice. Okay, so what is the science of life? Let me see what I missed. You can talk about that while I figure this out. What is the science of life?
Science of life are all the science, the biological sciences, obviously, but there's much more to it. And these are sort of deep questions, philosophical questions at the same time. And I would suggest that there is no substitute for them to reading actually what is said in the book, because there are no good superficial answers. I could answer superficial, the science of life is biology, but the new biology is very different from the previous biology. It's an integrated systemic biology. I would think the science of life is the science of holism, the science of wholeness, which has been around for thousands of years, but especially since the late 19th centuries, when John Smuts has come up with his work on the holistic principles, has been dismissed as purely imagination. Now we find that what is emerging in the world around us, in the sphere of life especially, are not mechanical aggregates. What emerging is integral systems made up of many different parts, diverse elements in a unity, in a higher unity. So what emerging are wholes, complex and coherent wholes. The science of life deals with these wholes. And that includes biology, it includes physics and physical chemistry, certainly. You see. It includes ecology.
Okay, so the second one is, what is the purpose of life?
Well, okay. Partly I've written that book.
Yes.
I've also written a parallel book.
Okay.
Because it's an autobiography.
Okay.
It's called My Journey.
All right.
Published at the same time as the Dawn of a New Age. It's published by the same publisher also. And it really tells you, the subtitle tells it all. It says, A Life in Quest of the Purpose of Life. So I claim in this book that I spent my whole life, from the very beginning of my adult period, inquiring, asking, what could be the purpose of my life and of life in general? Okay. So that's not something that superficial can say it's this or that, But I'm looking for that, and what I'm convinced of is that there is a deeper purpose. We are not here by chance. We are not here nothing happens by chance. It's important to know.
No.
There is this world, this whole universe could not evolve into how it evolved now, purely by random interactions. That can be calculated. Random interactions among DNA would not have produced the genome of a fruit fly in the period since the Big Bang. Now that's statistics.
Yeah, it cannot be random. It's amazing.
It cannot be random. There is something deeper in that. So the answer to the question about the purpose of life is whatever motivates, whatever is pushing, drives us. What is the force by which we can go? When you can say, go with the force, What is the force? I think it's evolution. And I think we can show there's an evolutionary impetus.
Evolution doesn't just exist on Earth, right? Evolution is a universal concept, right?
Whatever brings individual quanta together into atoms,
Okay.
into molecules, molecules into crystals, into cells, into organisms, into ecologies, into galaxies. And that's all brings things together. It creates higher levels of systems and orders. And evolution is the process by which, from the Big Bang, individual quanta, they were never actually individual quanta, but it appeared to us in the chaotic conditions of the early universe, that there would be just chaos in there with little fluctuations. But ever since then, what brought this quanta together, the electrons and the neutrons, they made a hydrogen atom, see? And the neutrons and the positrons, of course. So whatever brings these things into a higher level of order is an evolutionary impetus. And it created us, same way as it created the web of life on the planet. It's in us. And
Right. In plant life, animal life, it's all interwoven.
We all had the same origin. Everything had its origin in the Big Bang. And that's a current theory. Could be that we'll say something else, but that this universe was not always the way it is. That seems to me practically beyond question.
Okay. So you believe in the Big Bang Theory?
We don't know why it happened.
Okay.
We don't know what it is that happened, actually, because it's called a singularity. So it's not connected with anything else before or after, you know. But we do know that everything that occurred now originated from something else, from something which was basically more simpler, simpler and less integral, less organized. And its origin can be traced back. When you trace it back, you get, that's the consensus now of the analysis, 13.8 billion years, you get that consensus. So, okay, so you say that something happened at that point, which created this process that created the world.
Okay.
And so we call that a Big Bang.
Okay.
There are many people who say it wasn't a Big Bang, it was something else. Maybe it was a fluctuation in the previous universe, you know.
Okay.
There are many different cosmological answers. We are going to organize in my institute, the Laszlo Institute, having periodic symposia. We are starting a symposium tomorrow on, and going for the next 2 days, next 3 days actually, on the new cosmology, the new paradigm in cosmology, discussing precisely what do we know about the universe, about the birth of the universe, and what kind of a universe we live in, you know.
Wow.
So these are deep questions that we can know a little bit more about them than we used to know. And it's worthwhile asking this question.
That's exciting. That's very exciting. Okay, so then the third question, what is the condition we call well-being?
Coherence. Okay, I can answer that simply.
Coherence, okay.
Being coherent.
Okay.
Being coherent within ourselves, with our surroundings. Being in it, being with it, instead of separating ourselves off. So I think coherence is the key. You can call the appearance of coherence by another word. That word is love. Yeah. When you're coherent with something else, then you feel it yourself one with that something. And then the way you love yourself, you can love the other thing. So what you can, in science, purely science terms, you call coherence, can be expressed as the sense, as the feeling of unconditional love.
I love that. That's beautiful. And the fourth question is, what is the true nature of healing and health? And these are the 4 questions that were in there. So I'm asking you that. The true nature of healing and health.
Well, still, I think it's the best thing to consult. I don't always remember what I wrote in every book of mine.
Right, but whatever comes up.
Yes. But I think the true nature is precisely linked to this idea of being coherent.
Okay.
We are healthy. You're healthy when you're coherent.
Okay.
Healthy when you're one. And that's a new holism that we talk about also in this book. When you think of in terms of wholes that emerge and things that are healthy when they are whole, when all its parts work together. You know, I had the good fortune to work for some time before he died with the great Nobel laureate, physical chemist Ilya Prigozhin. And he showed very clearly with his mathematical experimental approach that a human and any organism, living organism, is healthy and is able to survive, to maintain itself in this, what he called very improbable, physically improbable state of life, because life is not probably physically probable. You know, how come that we maintain ourselves in this very complex state? How come we don't go down to the simpler levels? But Prigozhin showed that we actually stay up in this space, but the secret is all its elements, all cells in the organism work together. And they all have the same, oriented the same way, oriented to the same purpose, which is to maintain the system in this improbable state. Just this is one way of conceptualizing it, because physically it's improbable in the classical physics. But I think in the new physics, we say that it's not so improbable because all life is universal. Life is not limited to one thing, one place only. So this improbable drive is really a very basic drive in the universe toward wholeness, toward complexity. So this is the new insight into health and wholeness.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to talk to you and hear all the changes, because you're right up on all of these things. Dr. Laszlo, when did you begin to embrace these concepts? Because, you know, there was a time when these concepts seemed very radical, and it seems so natural for you to embrace that. So would you call yourself an intuitive, or is this based on education? Where are you getting your knowledge from?
Well, sure, intuitive, but it had to be backed by something. I used to be a concert pianist, you know, when I was a child and a young man. And actually, I earned my living until I got to the age of 30 or so, you know, by giving concerts worldwide.
Amazing.
And the experience of music is the experience of wholeness, of becoming part of a tremendous wave or a tremendous field of where everything is working together with everything else. That's sort of the living experience of music, especially when you perform music, even more especially when you perform in company with others, chamber music or playing with an orchestra and so on, being part. And if it's a live audience, where the audience is also part of it, you know. So I had this intuition already when I was a child. I had this musical experience from the time I was 9 years old. I was playing concerts. I grew up in a family of philosophers and musicians, and they asked these questions, you know, and they talked to me about it, even though it was too young to understand the details. And they somehow stuck with me. And then I started inquiring into it, and I started picking up written works, you know, works of wisdom. The greatest influence in my mind was a former collaborator of Einstein, which is Alfred North Whitehead, who is well known to our philosophical-minded people. He was a Cambridge philosopher who then came to US and taught at Harvard and lived the rest of his life in Harvard. So his big works like Process and Reality is a holistic philosophy of interdependence and of coherence. He didn't use those terms. He used his own very special language. It's difficult to understand, you know. Talked about the individual prehending the world, you know what I mean, prehending. But he meant by that comprehending the rest of the world more than just intellectual becoming one with the rest of the world and such things. So Whitehead was an influence on me. And then other people who followed the Whiteheadian school, like Northrop, C. W. Northrop, for example, or Ludwig von Bertalanffy, systems theory. All these were influences in my life. So they followed up my intuition. So the answer is both intuition and reference to scientific work. Intuition is a guide, you see,
Right.
and then you try to substantiate if you're going the right way or not. Not everything works. And if you're not in the right way, the guide just tells you stop, you know, it doesn't work. I just follow the guide as long as I get a green light on it.
Okay, that's the way to go. All right. So, wow, thank you. I know that we're going to try to finish this interview now, and give you a nice evening where you can relax. But what is coming for you next? What can we look forward to?
coming a little more light at the end of the tunnel. We are still in a tunnel,
Okay.
but there is a light at the end. We're beginning to see new thinking coming, being that we are not just pursue our short-sighted, narrow, selfish ends, but becoming more together on this planet, realizing that we don't make it individually if we are separating ourselves off. There's a new humanism coming. We have to allow it to come, and we have to make it come in time, because the problems themselves are becoming worse and worse, the environmental problems especially, also the human social problems. So I hope it's coming toward a bright alternative. I have my newest book, which is called The Upshift, is showing how they can thrive on planet Earth. And its motto is the bright alternative. There is an alternative, and there's a bright alternative. And I hope that we'll follow that. At least I'm trying to do my best to describe it so that people can say, aha, I knew this, and I'd like to go that way.
Oh, wow. You're just cranking those books right out, aren't you? They're coming through you very quickly.
Yes, actually, you know, in terms of statistics, if you look at the latest statistics, I now have 106 different books to my credit.
Oh my gosh.
in 20. But not the number that counts, but I mean, I've been insisting now for a dozen years or more on the coming big change, the coming bifurcation, the coming systemic revolution, as it were. And we've been pushed into it. It came faster actually than I thought. And now we're in it. And what's coming is in our hands. But if we realize these ideas that we've been talking about and we follow them up, we can start living it, then I think we'll take the bright alternative and we'll make an unparalleled leap of human life on this planet.
What a positive message to leave us with. Thank you so much, Dr. Laszlo. I so appreciate you giving us this time today. It's just been fantastic. And I really appreciate you putting all of this together in a way that we can all digest it and maybe really make it personal so that we can become part of the whole. But I really wish you a wonderful day, and I look forward to all the work, your future work, because it's all so exciting. But
thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Yes, it's great to talk to you too. Have a wonderful day. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. Okay. Bye-bye.